Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're tackling a topic that literally almost every single driver has stressed out about at least once, but honestly, very few actually understand. We are going to fully demystify Victoria's towing industry, and specifically the hidden duality of its rules and costs. Because if you've ever been hit with a massive towing bill and thought, wait, how on earth did they calculate this number? You are in exactly the right place. We're going to use some fantastic data and reports today to break it all down for you. Okay, let's dive right into this. Our roadmap for the explainer today is pretty straightforward. Number 1, the towing nightmare. 2, accident versus trade towing. 3, the true cost of towing. 4, who actually sets the rules. And finally, number 5, we'll take a look at the 2025 fees review. All right, kicking things off with section 1, the towing nightmare.
Look, we have all been there. Or at the very least, we've had nightmares about it, right? You're cruising along, maybe you're on a busy highway like the Geelong Ring Road, or you're smack in the middle of Melbourne, and suddenly, bang. Whether it's a terrifying collision or just that sickening sound of your engine completely dying, your car is dead. The immediate panic sets in. You're stranded. You need to get to safety, but right behind that initial fear comes that dreadful financial calculation. Which brings us to the million-dollar question. Ever wondered why towing costs so much? It is a moment of total vulnerability for a consumer. You need a tow truck right this second, and you rarely have the luxury of shopping around for the best deal while cars are just whizzing past you at 100 kilometers an hour. But as you'll see in the data, the price you end up paying actually depends entirely on why you're broken down in the first place.
Moving on to section 2, accident versus trade towing. So this brings us to the big, well-kept secret of the industry. In Victoria, there isn't just one towing market. There are actually 2 completely different towing worlds operating simultaneously on the exact same roads. It's kind of crazy. Let's look at the stark contrast here. On one side, we have accident towing. If you crash at an intersection, the response is heavily regulated by the government. In certain areas, tow trucks are literally dispatched through a strict allocation scheme just to ensure a 30-minute response time, and the fees they can charge, strictly capped. Now, on the flip side, we have trade towing. If your car just breaks down, like say you get a flat tire or the engine fails, you enter a completely private, competitive, and unregulated market. You have to negotiate the price directly with private companies like Elite 24/7 or All Car Towing. Just to anchor our understanding here, Victorian law defines accident towing very specifically as the towing of damaged vehicles from road accident scenes. That right there is the legal trigger. If it's an accident, the government regulations kick in. But if it's a breakdown, a clearway tow, or an impound, that's trade towing, and the open market completely dictates the terms. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly where those strict accident allocation schemes actually apply. The blue zone is the Melbourne-controlled area, and that orange zone down there is the self-management area of Geelong. Inside these boundaries, if you get into an accident, a specific call center operates on a roster basis. They assign the job to the tow truck operator who has had the least allocations that month, basically to keep things fair and orderly. But outside these zones, it is open season. Tow trucks can attend absolutely any accident they're called to.
All right, let's get to section 3, the true cost of towing.
Let's shift our focus strictly to your wallet for a second. Now, what's really interesting about this is how rapidly these costs can escalate based purely on distance. Using pricing data provided by the Sheen Group, for just a standard, non-urgent daytime tow, we see a base rate for short distances, about $143 for the first 1 to 10 kilometers. But watch what happens as the distance increases. So does the per kilometer pricing. Pushing out to 30 kilometers jumps the price to $165. And if you need a long distance tow, say up to 100 kilometers, you are looking at $242 or more. And remember, if this happens after hours or on a weekend, or if you require specialized heavy-duty equipment, those base rates are going to get hit with some pretty significant surcharges. Navigating these costs is honestly overwhelming, but companies like All Car Towing recommend a highly structured 5-step process if you're ever in an accident. Step 1, immediately contact your insurance provider. Step 2, arrange the tow, either through the insurance company or yourself, depending on what your coverage actually is. Step 3 is securing storage at the depot, which, good news, insurance often covers. Step 4 is the damage assessment. And finally, step 5 is guaranteeing those repair expenses. Honestly, following this chronological process is absolutely crucial so you don't get stuck footing an unexpected bill that your insurance should have handled. Meanwhile, if we look at the completely unregulated breakdown market, the trade towing side we mentioned earlier, prices just vary wildly depending on who you call. In the Geelong area, for example, a provider like Elite 24/7 advertises rates around $120 for the first 10 kilometers. But then other providers like Fast Melbourne Towing might charge up to $165 for that exact same distance. Because it's an open market, your ability to quickly research and compare prices while you're literally stuck on the shoulder of the road directly impacts your wallet. Which brings us to Section 4, who sets the rules? Okay, so we've seen the local prices, but let's zoom out for a second. Who exactly acts as the referee keeping these regulated prices in check? Well, the answer starts with this absolutely crucial number, 4 tons. This is the legal threshold in Victoria that separates regular vehicles from heavy vehicles. If your car is under 4 tons, it falls under that strict accident allocation scheme and the regulated pricing we've been discussing. But if it's a heavy vehicle, it's a completely different ballgame and sits totally outside the scope of standard consumer price protections. So for those regular vehicles under 4 tons involved in an accident in Melbourne, the pricing is determined at the very highest levels. The Minister for Roads and Road Safety actually sets the exact accident towing and storage fees. But the minister doesn't just pull these numbers out of thin air, right? They make their determinations based on really deep, detailed recommendations provided every 4 years by the Essential Services Commission. This entire chain of command exists for one specific reason: consumer financial protection during a super high-stress emergency. Finally, let's look at Section 5, the 2025 Fees Review. Knowing these prices are reviewed every 4 years, what does the immediate future actually look like? Well, in their Accident Towing Fees Review 2025 draft report, the Essential Services Commission uses what they call a benchmarking approach. Basically, they look at the current regulated fees in Melbourne and compare them to fees in places like Sydney, Adelaide, and Queensland. They also look at local, unregulated trade towing costs, all to figure out if Victorian drivers are actually getting a fair deal.
So, you might be wondering, how are these prices adjusted year over year? Well, the Commission uses an annual adjustment mechanism to tweak prices slightly every year without needing a massive overhaul. It's a formula that takes the Melbourne Transport Consumer Price Index and subtracts a productivity adjustment factor. And that factor, it is exactly 0.5%. Now, despite massive disruptions over the last few years from the pandemic, the Commission analyzed the data and decided that this 0.5% productivity target is actually still highly appropriate for the towing industry.
So what did the 2025 draft report actually recommend after all that intense benchmarking? 4 clear things. 1. No base change to accident towing fees. 2. No base change to vehicle storage fees. 3. Maintain that 0.5% indexation adjustment we just talked about. And 4. They found absolutely no evidence of rampant price gouging for basic vehicle salvage, like pulling a car out of a ditch. So they recommend keeping it unregulated for now. So the crucial point is really captured perfectly by the Commission themselves right here. They state, current regulated accident towing fees are appropriate and should only be increased in line with current indexation arrangements. Basically, by maintaining the status quo, the government is essentially saying that the current system protects the consumer baseline effectively without starving the tow truck operators of a fair living. Which leaves us with this somewhat provocative question to end on. With no major changes recommended for 2025, is Victoria's dual-system towing industry perfectly balanced between protecting vulnerable consumers and allowing free market competition? Or is it just parked in neutral? It's a genuinely fascinating regulatory balancing act playing out on our roads every single day. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope the next time you see a tow truck out there, you understand exactly the forces driving it.